This graph was released back around 2017. As you can see from the stages listed, the author was expecting a different trajectory than what has played out over the last 7 years. A freeze on refunds, cash flow issues, Mass Effect Andromeda and Starfield stealing the thunder, and ultimately the failure of Star Citizen. Now don't get me wrong, it can always fail, but since then revenue has soared, player numbers have ballooned, and the game has continued development. But there's another side of that story. See, this graphic also calls out things like the reintroduction of formerly one-time only ships for sale, and other things like flash sales to help with stable cash flow. While anybody can place reasoning on decisions like this, we have seen similar situations pop up at times. And while this trajectory clearly has not proven true, and various people, groups, and biblical philosophies have told of the inevitable downfall of Star Citizen, there are some very good reasons why all these predictions do exist. But why, despite that, does it continue to grow, drawing in new players and driving space games forward? Today we'll take a look at the 3 main reasons Star Citizen continues to succeed, and the 3 shortcomings it does so in spite of. This is another supporter-exclusive Red Take supported by my Patreon and YouTube channel members and released in February. If you'd like to get more in-depth, high-quality videos about Star Citizen, consider joining after the video. And for those who have, thank you for supporting my Tomato Talks. No Man's Sky is an amazing game. Unlimited planets to explore, caves to descend into, spaceships to fly, vast stretches of land to explore, mining, hanging out with friends, soaring over sites, and finding the perfect combination of flora and fauna for you and your friends to build a base near. Like few games before it, No Man's Sky offers a freedom of exploration that spans every medium we know of: water, ground, air, space, and even other planets. Now take that concept, but add an FPS perspective with more detailed physical interaction, the ability to walk around on and customize your ship both interior and exterior, the chance for your friends to join you on that ship. Change the graphic style to something more in line with the genre. Include homages to many of the sci-fi IPs that drew people to these games in the first place. Allow dozens of people to meet in-game and create change together. Develop ground vehicles, deeper planetary gameplay for more interaction. Plop down massive cities with spaceports, shops, and services that players can use. Develop planetary features that will draw eyes, and create smaller points of interest for everything in between. Star Citizen as an idea wouldn't surprise anybody as a successful one. But after 10 years of development, if you aren't playing the game, it can be surprising why the project is still going strong. It's not like the project is a glowing poster child for success. It has been a struggle, to be sure. Progress was slowed down a lot by growing pains, from losing work due to contracting issues, grappling with rapidly expanding team count, and figuring out the ins and outs of a new game engine. But there's basically no competition on the market to eat into the unique opportunity Star Citizen has offered. Probably the biggest reason people seem drawn to Star Citizen is its scale. In size, feature set, scope, and variability, Star Citizen in its current basic form is a game of possibility. Flying between planets is great in No Man's Sky, but you're always stuck in your one ship, and that ship is only a means of transportation. Elite Dangerous takes on planetary landing, but in addition to it being a paid add-on, it's mostly unsupported. Starfield... There are many different space projects out there aiming to provide a unique experience, but none aim for this breadth of choices in gameplay. Racing, mining, combat, ship flight, cargo loading, hauling, or even illegally acquiring goods. Farming, engineering, navigation, base building, city living, cave diving, exploring derelict space stations, and more. And the dream is doing all this in a seamless environment inside of a growing economy, with the option to switch direction at a moment's notice, move to a different city, a different planet, a different system, at your own pace, with or without your friends, to do whatever it is you want. This is all, of course, due to their game engine. While many companies will opt for a ready-made engine like Unreal or Unity, CIG ripped apart the CryEngine that powered some great games in the 2000s, and with the help of many Crytek devs, developed their own game engine on top of the foundation over the last 10 years. This allows them to build a system that works how they want it to. 64-bit coordinate system, atmospheric planet re-entry, Zero loading screens, the object streaming tech that allows for it, server meshing networking to expand the play space as they see fit, unique hair rendering models, damage systems, ray tracing solutions, and more. Most companies that build up the funding needed to create something like this are already gigantic publishers with a lot of investment. CIG has done so entirely through crowdfunding, and can now wield this engine to polish the games the players have been waiting for. It's not common an opportunity like this comes along, let alone in the space game genre. This unmatched scope has granted Star Citizen a lot of its success. But you can't succeed with scope alone. You need to walk the talk, at least to some extent. You need to deliver on your promises. Many of the games that succeed nowadays are games that are constantly updated with new content. The live service model has proven that to some extent. So Star Citizen's model of quarterly updates with small patches sprinkled in between leads to constant new content being delivered with some pretty heavy implications behind it. When players know the next update carries new cargo functionality or an update to the star map or completely new locations, it gives them a lot more to look forward to every year, 4 times a year, until this player's supposed dream game is complete. Then you get to play it. This model of course comes with many delays and failed expectations, but so many players talk about Star Citizen as if you can't even get out of your bed without melting your PC, so players actually come in expecting slower progress. That being said, this is a piece of the puzzle that has really only made a bigger difference in the last couple years. New features and content aren't everything you need for success, but for a large subset of gamers, it's the best reason to keep coming back to a game. And to not only see those features improving with each year, but to see how they change your favorite game with each edition is a good enough reason for many to keep coming back. With how closed down most game companies are about what goes into their games, and with so many layoffs after such a great year of success, many gamers are left wondering how the process even works and what it looks like to make one of these games from the inside. And Star Citizen has provided a lot of that information over the years. Then there's the fact that people can't stop talking about this game. The number of people who do not care about, play, or want anything to do with Star Citizen, but still seek out avenues to discuss it, is clear of that. And when it comes up in the press in a big way, it spreads like wildfire. The last time this happened, I got Lone Vault Wanderer from the Bethesda side of town to come discuss the game with me on the podcast. Last year I shot for Ryan McCaffrey. He was not interested. But the spectacle surrounding Star Citizen allows for some very easy mindshare in a very large market, and that does a lot in a world where, as we touched on it before, it doesn't have much competition. So anytime somebody mentions Star Citizen and a player goes to look it up, they see a game where people are floating in space outside of spaceships, walking around down in caves, flying large industrial vessels, and racing on moons, while also running into a multitude of glitches. These aren't things you see in a lot of games. It's interesting, it's a bit different, and it can actually catch your attention. And while it may be a bit rough right now, that premise and design remains true, and continues to be the path the game follows. The updates continue every single year with new features and major engine developments, and anytime it comes up, players are able to see that the game is still around, still progressing, and showing more direction than ever. When you consider the state of the games industry right now, how little many of the biggest titles and games have moved the industry forward since the late 2000s, and the lack of larger scale space titles out there, Star Citizen's success shouldn't come as a huge surprise in my opinion. But it also doesn't come without its problems. It's gotten to where it is in spite of some things, and the company itself continues to make decisions that could always lead to a less than desirable outcome. Let's take a look at some of those less favorable predictions from before. One of the most common criticisms of Star Citizen is its store. While there is more noise made about certain things than is worth if context is taken into account, the company is still a company, and marketing is still marketing. From consistent emails promoting sales to FOMO-inducing sales of ships that were at least understood to have only ever been sold at specific times, even the great community events which are healthy for the game and promote a more active fanbase are usually joined at the hip by ship sales. These sales are a constant in Star Citizen, and the prices chosen, emphasis put on them, and the sometimes awkward timing of ships that have no surety of their own gameplay all leave a bad taste in the mouth for many folks, and at times actually prove some of those predictions right. from FOMO single ship sales to flash sales on recent ships that we've been seeing recently. This is the harsh reality of a game as big as Star Citizen trying to be primarily self-funded, rather than relying on investors or a publishing company. Rather than spending money that's meant to be earned back later, the company is selling pledges to build the game with cash. This is healthy as it allows the company to also invest in things like buildings, talent, and IP rather than paying investors back. But it also means the tactics used to continue the funding development can get a bit overreaching and are primarily targeting the player base. I do hope that CIG can find a good balance here, as I think there's definitely room for improvement in a lot of ways that this is handled. I have not run a large company or developed a video game. I also do not know what goes on behind the walls of CIG, but I have been around long enough to know just how much criticism Chris Roberts can get for dates. The 2016 roadmap was the pinnacle of pain, but there have been many times throughout Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development when communication and progress simply did not match up. Whatever the reason may be, there have been some pretty major mismanagements of expectations regarding this game and the project as a whole. Not always in the overall scope, but generally in timelines. This has been a consistent and recurring theme of the project that adds a lot to that public reputation it has. We can see the consequences of this in things like the shrinking roadmap, a product of years of inaccurate public timelines, which often would be incorrect from any company, but you can't look at the timeline of salvage being delivered and not feel like something was off here. Video games, software, and programming in general are incredibly difficult things to do, unpredictable, and sometimes completely out of your control. But I certainly think the arc of Star Citizen has plenty to teach on quickly expanding project management. I've covered some of the rough spots in Star Citizen's development in the past, I'll leave those below. I'm sure there will be more, but as the project progresses, I'm hopeful CIG will continue to improve their processes and communication for the sake of the game. Finally, the third problem that weighs on Star Citizen, though never seemed to stop it, is the ridiculous development time. Look, I'm only human. This game has taken a long time to reach a playable, quality, solid state. But let's look at why, then you'll get why the time taken hasn't quite killed the project. Remember we talked about that game engine being built. Last year they released the showcase trailer for that engine as a sort of, we are about to release 1.0. Which is likely what we will all know as 4.0. Game engines are not easy to make, and while this one was built using CryEngine, it is a wildly customized and purpose-built piece of software that's meant to build a space sim. Building this engine required the funding of a working video game. So, over the last 10 years, CIG has had to balance the development costs and time commitment of this game engine, Squadron 42, and Star Citizen's development with the revenues of a constantly running but broken persistent universe with some ships in it. That equation isn't an easy one, but throughout this whole time the goal was the same, a large-scale seamless space environment. From 2012 to 2017 to 2020 to 2023, the company has strived for the same things, delivered on some of those things, and shown progress on others. And every time they do, it encourages players to see that the original scope and scale that they wanted is still the goal. While many games get distracted or fail to show progress, the slow time has been joined by regular, though many times disappointing, progress updates. And for enough players to keep Star Citizen succeeding year after year, that's enough. Hopefully this long diatribe about Star Citizen helped explain why it still manages to continue 12 years running, and likely won't be going anywhere soon. This video was made as a supporter exclusive in February, but I make videos every week to help folks understand this game better. So if you're interested in learning more, consider subscribing and maybe you like the video. And if you're looking for something more podcasty, check out my second channel, Space Tomato 2. For my supporters, exclusive monthly videos, behind the scenes, and your referral code in my referral code randomizer are all benefits you can get for helping us make this possible. I hope you learned something new in this video, and I'll catch you in the next.